Good evening and welcome to Play Talk. My name is Christopher Ram. Thank you for joining me for the next hour. I'll be talking with Mr. Robert Badal, presidential candidate of one of the newer political groupings, political party, Change Guyana. Mr. Badal is an old friend of mine. He's a chartered accountant. He has been in business, very successful hotelier, Hotel Pegasus, and sometime in October 2019, along with another chartered accountant, Mr. Nigel Hines, he launched the political party Change Guyana. Mr. Badal, welcome to Plato.
Thank you, Chris.
The name of the party Change Guyana. What is it you wish to change about Guyana?
Well, Chris, I mean, as you mentioned, you're an old friend of mine. I was here in 2015 on this very program.
And we go back much longer than that.
Very and you were one of my lecturers when I was doing the ACCA many moons ago. I can't fully remember. I think you returned from Grenada then,
Yeah.
and you set up a very successful accounting and auditing practice. And I was fortunate to be one of the students. You know, in those days, you didn't have school. Your lecture was your tutorship was one of the few available locally.
Thank you.
But you know, living in Guyana all these years, I'm among. When I look back, I don't have a childhood friend that is in Guyana today. I mean, and it goes for most people in this country. Communities that I've lived in, that I passed through. When I go back, I know nobody, not even the shopkeeper. So there are a lot of problems in this country that has caused the migration. It's not a regular society like when we go overseas. We can find people who born there, who grew up there, who continue all their life. They have kids, they have businesses, they develop a family, a family tree actually over generations.
Yes.
Today we have a very a problem that has been all over the years since independence.
Well, actually, it's even before independence, isn't it?
Well, it's before independence, but we had a good relationship with Britain. So there
Yes.
was no problem if people going to London, stay there, and then come back. We were British subjects.
Yes.
Right? But the height of the migration in the 80s, the 90s, and even continue after restoration of democracy in 1992. In the 90s, we have had significant migration, even at the turn of the century, the 24th century.
Yes, continues.
So it continues, and even to this day, we find that people will vote in these elections, and then after the election, they leave. We have a serious problem of racial division, and that has seized people into thinking that it's only one party as against. And even though that they have failed over the years in bringing about economic prosperity and creating jobs and create that hope and stability in our country so that people can aspire to achieving things and build a life together and look at the future and stay within our shores, what we find, people migrating to the US, to Canada, to London, to Trinidad, to wherever
Anyway.
they can find jobs and a life which is denied here.
So how does Change Guyana change that?
Well, by the name itself, we think that, we came to the belief that the time is right now that we need a change. We have had the PPP and PNC all over history. All myself and younger folks than myself, we all have seen only one set of leaders all the time since growing up. It's either the PPP or the PNC. But they have created the failure in having a vibrant, strong economy stem from the fact that they have never set the conditions to create wealth. If you don't create wealth in a country or in an economy, you can't distribute it because you will find problems of what we have now is the highest level of employment we have seen Some of the statistics is showing over 30%. So that tells a story, and we wonder why people migrate. Basically, they don't see a hope going forward. They don't see a hope of buying a
But
car.
is it because is it a chicken and egg situation, Robert? That the governance structure in our country, the political arrangements, um, lead to bad economics rather than bad economics leading to bad governance.
Bad governance. Well, it could be both sides, because the governance structure is such that it creates a monopoly by the two parties. But if those parties, if they were successful in creating industries and creating jobs, I mean, we would have been way ahead. And you see, with job creation come economic prosperity. You have a population that is more independent, a population that is feel free, much free, and would vote on issues. It is difficult to bring about that change in governance when people only vote race. And that's why Change Guyana came in. Nigel and myself, we sat together and said, look, as responsible leaders, as people that have credibility in society and are successful and can provide good leadership, we came together to say we will challenge the PPP and the PNC in this election, and we are articulating a vision for this country that we have never seen before. The economic side is important because, as I mentioned, if you don't create wealth, you can't distribute wealth. And if we look back, this
But you can
economy,
create wealth and hoard it, as happens in some countries.
yes, you can create wealth and hoard it. But even with that, we have failed, because the high taxation that we have experienced in this country should have been able to redistribute wealth. Even though a few people making money and paying high taxes, we should have been able to redistribute that into development projects. But our failure into bring about development projects, even at the highest level of taxation in the region, we have failed to invest that money. When you look at today, government consumption has increased 36% in the last 4 years, whereas government investment in the economy has gone down. Private sector investment has declined on account of heavy taxation. Also, the feeling that local businesses are being marginalized, are being discriminated.
You've raised this issue about taxation. What is so wrong with a tax rate of 25% for companies, other than on commercial activities, and a 28 and 26.67 personal tax rate? Are those particularly high?
Well, not only the corporate tax rate. When you look at the corporate tax rate of 27%, going from this money will be 25%.
Well, it's 25 now.
But
yes.
in addition to that, you have VAT of 14%.
Well, but VAT isn't paid by businesses. VAT is paid by the consumers.
Right. You recoup that, but certain VAT you don't recoup, like VAT on electricity. Companies can't recoup that because they change the rules. For example, whereas my company used to pay, let's say, $100 million in taxes, but because of that change, because we could have recovered that VAT on electricity, it costing me $28 million more this year. So the level of taxation does play a role, but not only a company, but the level of taxation on the individual is very extortionary. Because imagine somebody earning $100,000, they have to pay 30% of that, plus they have to pay NIS.
Well, 28%.
28% plus NIS.
NIS, of course, is not a tax.
It's not a tax.
It's a contribution to your own
to your
medical and pension
yes.
fund.
But the fact that it restricts the purchasing power, when you don't have purchasing power, the whole economy becomes stagnated.
So the money is then collected by the government, and the government misspends it.
You know what they do with it.
Yeah.
For example, let me finish that very important point. Since independence, we had bauxite, sugar, rice. Bauxite went down. So take, for example, the people in East Berbice at Everton, that was closed. So there's such a depressed community. And about 60% of those people have already migrated. No new industry, even in the midst of increasing government revenue, no industries were created there. No initiative to distribute land so you can have agricultural development. No initiative to set up processing that would create jobs. So we have failed there. Now, sugar. There was a long period since in the late 80s. I remember you were talking about it. This trend toward away from sugar because of the closure of preferential treatment into Europe, the whole WTO rules and these kind of things. But we failed to do anything in preparation to that. And not only failed to do anything to prepare to diversify the industry, we went ahead and spent $200 million on Skellen Estate. That the one act that bankrupt Gaisuko, you were in opposition to it. I mean, on plain talk and otherwise. I mean, a lot of people in Guyana had opposed it, but they went ahead. All Gaisuko resources, cash flows, went into a failed entity that is now a white elephant. So we have failed in management of the economy, particularly in state corporations, where significant assets exist, but we have failed to manage those. Look at GPL now. I mean, consistent bailout over the years. When I was there 2 years, I added $8 billion in cash flows in 2 years. In the last 2 years, it's around $8 billion in deficit. So come next year, how we will cover that? We have to bail out GPL again. One party say, look, we're going to reopen the estates. Look at the financial consequences of that. I mean, you can never reopen an estate.
We'll come to sugar and how you plan, what change Guyana is proposing to do about it. Now, for all of what you say about the past government, you were very close to the AFC, if I recall.
Yes.
And particularly its leadership. What made you turn from that party?
Well, Chris, I mean, and it come back to my current engagement with Change Guyana. After 23 years in office of the PPP, and you would recall the level of abuse, the level of intimidation of business people who speak out against the record of governance, right? After 23 years, I felt that, this is not good for Guyana. It's not good for any country to have one party in 23 years. And at the same time, sugar was declining. GPL had to be bailed out. Consistent mistakes and failures. So I was approached, not by Kemraj or Moses or AFC. After I took over the hotel, Sheila Holder came to me and said, look, you know what? We need some assistance. We would really appreciate if you can help us. My relationship with AFC was just to provide some support for them to stay liquid and viable so that we can make that change we made in 2015. I was never a member of a party.
No, I wasn't suggesting that, but my question is, what made you turn from that party?
Well, I had no loyalty to any party. I was never a member of any political party, APNU, PPP. I was always, like most businessmen, was always neutral. But the record of AFC, APNU, PNC alliance in APNU didn't deliver on the hope and the promises that they have made. If you look at the 2015 manifesto and all the deliverables and the promises, 90% of it remain unfulfilled. Like when we went to Linden, I didn't see the manifesto, and while we were at a meeting at Linden, I asked Nigel, show me the promises to Linden in the last election. And I was shocked that 90% of those promises, the bigger items were not delivered. For example, to diversify, create a little more value on bauxite. A simple thing that APNU could have done, the APNU AFC, they could have done, was the fact that you have to have a royalty on bauxite. You can't dig up the earth and you're just creating limited, low-paying jobs to Guyanese. Linden need development, and bauxite is a good place to start by having a royalty. Like, let's say, give me $5. $5 would have, at 1.5 million tons a year, would have created 7.5 million US.
Yes.
That money would have had to spend in Linden, but any revenue this government take, it comes to Georgetown.
But does it shock you? Does it surprise you that the government, APNU plus AFC government, is so very popular in the very area that they've neglected? How do you explain that? Now that you're in politics, Robert.
Because it's difficult to explain that. But when we got into this, and people, our youths are so excited now. We had about 200 people at the nomination there last Friday. And when I look at that and the amount of people that approached me that on the road there, they were from Linden, and they still have loyalty to APNU. I couldn't understand this. My only hope is that my reading into it is that we haven't we never came out with an alternative that that the people saw is viable. AFC was that alternative, but then after they were subsumed by PNC, the alliance, the APNU.
So are you being realistic in hoping that Change Guyana will be that alternative, particularly having regard to the fact that you don't have a particularly great record, and I say that respectfully, in big issues, that you've only had a few months. Do you think that you can, in fact, be that change force, realistically?
Yeah, well, a lot of odds are saying no, I shouldn't believe that. But I've always been an optimist all my life, and I went in the industry that I knew nothing about, and I was very successful in those industries. And I've seen problems of the day, and thinking of those problems, when I looked at it and dissected properly, I came up to a very significant solution. And my hope is that people will see that we are a distinct difference, despite the fact of just over 2 months now, that people will see that we are a credible alternative, and that they have been failed in the past, and our programs and our policies are creative, and it hit them, and they see that it's possible that we could bring about that opportunity that we're waiting for all the time. Despite the short period, I felt that something needs to be done. Guyana cannot move forward with having this kind of record. We are of all the countries around us, we are significantly more wealthy in terms of resources. So that has given me that hope that now we have a more informed electorate.
The country is wealthy and the people are poor, the majority of the people.
Yeah,
that's another contradiction. It's
difficult to reconcile that. But if you don't create jobs, people will leave to find jobs. Look, about 20 years now, I've had a second home in Trinidad. And the amount of Trinidadian Guyanese that I've met in Trinidad, who are contractors, who are small businessmen, who are technicians, who are mechanic, who are electrical. Our resources have gone there because they have created that opportunity. We haven't created the opportunity. And to your point of governance, I think governance plays a significant role in creating that hope and that change. Countries that change their governments often are much wealthier. They do better because they hold politicians in check. Without that governance, dealing with corruption and ensure that we get value for what we spend, and that we get value, we get some contribution from our resources that are being used, especially our natural resources, it's difficult to continue. And we'll have the same leadership. As how I stood up when I supported AFC, I'm standing up now because I feel it's crucial. There's nothing for me in this because, I can go my jolly way and don't even worry about anything. But every time I come to Guyana and I open that paper and I see we're not getting anything from bauxite, we're not getting much from oil. The oil resources are so vast, we'll get a lot of money. But the potential, what we should have had, we're not getting. We're not seeing that we have decisions that are being made that are very pragmatic, that are well researched, that are well advised. politicians who have done very little for themselves before political life are making big, grand decisions. And when the media and the public raise issues like yourself raising issues, or I talk about something, you're being victimized, you're your number one enemy. I mean, I can't live in a country and don't bring these issues to the fore. And that's the source of, 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 of my coming together on the Change Guyana, because I'm so optimistic that the people will see the sincerity in the leadership of Change Guyana, and that we can really make a big inroads.
I want to ask you two questions that have caused some concern. Nigel Hines, a well-regarded chartered accountant, CPA, he's been very prominent in the media. A couple of days after the nomination, he announced that he had dual citizenship and therefore was not on the list. Why was this announcement made so late? Why wasn't it made as soon as, I think he said at his press conference yesterday,
Yes.
that he knew sometime in
By
December the 15th, he knew for sure.
Yes.
Why did the party wait so late? And
Yeah.
why did it leave it to him to make the announcement?
Well, first of all, Nigel is very committed to this change, and despite the fact that he wasn't on the list because of Joel's citizenship, and we can debate that rule there is not, which we think is not good for Guyana.
Well, it's still the rule, though.
It's still the rule. And despite it existed there, other people used it, were in Parliament when they know fully well that they shouldn't have been in Parliament. But the fact
It's
that
called hypocrisy.
but the fact, when you look in the bigger view of things, we slipped up there, but we prepare our press our press release for Nigel since before the end of the year. But for some reason, we got caught up in the nomination process because it was like a lot of work to get signatures and bring about candidates and go all around the country, spending a lot of money. All our energies and our resources was directed to that. But we had the press release to make, and we were going to make it on Tuesday, and last Tuesday when we normally have press conference. But we got caught up in things, and after the nomination, we said, look, this thing is better we release it, and we released it this Sunday. But, I mean, we slip up a little, but, I mean, we had all intentions to disclose it. And because of that, we didn't put Nigel on the list. Nigel remained a leader in Change Guyana. He's the chairman of the party. He's involved in framing policies and bringing about programs. He will be with us at every stage of the campaign over the next 6 weeks. I mean, we only have 6 weeks more. And he's a big shoe to fill. Nigel is a big shoe to fill. You know Nigel.
Yes, he's a big guy.
Big
in more ways than one.
Physically and intellectually, and has been a very good support. And I think we mesh well together. I mean, our thinking and so strategic thinking blends well. And like a lot of people I know in other parties have to meet every day and have committees meetings. I mean, I could make a decision, Nigel could make a decision. Our decisions are so sync in line with our policies and our objectives. So we apologize for that. We really slip up there, but we had no intention of putting Nigel on the list.
Now
he was going to start the process to renounce, but after his medical examination, and then he waited because a follow-up medical examination had to be done in December, and then he realized, yes, I think it was just before Christmas, he realized, look, we can't go forward with this renunciation because it doesn't make sense. And there it comes to people have to go overseas for medical. Medical is non-existent.
A basic right. It's a basic right.
Right? I would say non-existent in Nigel's case that he can have medical attention in Guyana. Whereas it's paid free if you're a citizen in the U.S. You have insurance. We don't have proper insurance. And INS is no option as regards
NIS.
insurance is concerned. So it's another failure. I mean, 53 years after independence, we can't have any standard of medical care. You know, I can't go to, public hospital. I mean, you wouldn't go to public hospital. A lot of people, they do their medical when they travel.
It's not one of your top 10 choices for medical supply.
Well,
now,
of course.
when you launched, it was clear that the position of prime ministerial candidate, partly, I suppose, because of his personality, but you made the presidential candidate and prime ministerial candidate critical issues. Has the delay in announcing Mr. Heinz's non-eligibility not also affected filling the slot, and how do you deal with this now?
Yeah, you could say that, but at the point of nomination, it's very difficult to change anything because you can't bring in new people. I mean, we have a lot of people who have showed an interest in coming in.
No, but this is why I said
Yes,
before nomination.
it did create some risk for us, not disclosing it.
And acting on
Well,
it.
we were hoping that we could have done that before announcing, because announcing gives us a certain level of, put us in a disadvantageous position. So we were thinking that we could have done it before. But as I mentioned, I mean, the run-up to nomination was very, very hectic. Was very, very limited time to do anything. But, you know, that is what it is. You know, we have to move forward. I mean, our people on the ground, they're never mind very motivated. They're very committed to the task. We have a lot of youths on the ground all across Guyana, in all the regions that we are contesting. And they're doing a wonderful work. I mean, and they're making such good progress. Our social media platform and the traction we're getting there because of our creative thinking and all the solutions that we have brought about. I think that will get us forward over the next 6 weeks.
It's interesting you mentioned social media, because the next question I was going to ask you is that Change Guyana has in fact made extensive use of telecommunications and social media. But on the very social media, you received a lot of flack for your attitude to trade union representation of workers in your businesses.
Yes.
Was this flack justified?
I don't know. It's history. I mean, when I took over Guyana Stock Feeds, we had Guyana Labor Union, and Guyana Labor Union was very anti-government. You know, the PPP was in office then, and we had a lot of
But GLU was headed by Carville Duncan at one time.
Yes,
Who was PPP,
yes.
wasn't he?
We never had a conflict with GLU per se, but when GPC, our neighbor, had a conflict with GLU, they came and blocked our gate. So the farmers all over this country, and a lot of farmers depend on Guyana Stock Feeds for feed. You can't tell the chicken you don't have feed today. They collapse and they die. They get vexed and they die. So we never had an issue with the union, but because a neighbor of us had an issue and they were on strike, they came and blocked our gate for more than a week. And I recall I was out of the country then.
So it was a Stock Feeds issue, not a Pegasus issue.
Well, that was one interaction I've had with the union.
Yes.
After that, all the union members took voluntary redundancy. I mean, from advice of the union. I don't know what played around there. But since then, we have developed a very good team. We have people there that joined, and they're there 30 years now. With Pegasus was it followed the same pattern where when I took over Pegasus, I realized that some people were getting like $30,000 a month. And I thought that was unfair because the company was making money and the money was going overseas. So when I took over, I doubled the salary. I said the minimum, this was 10 years ago, the minimum anybody should work is 60,000. So I doubled that. Some people were 40,000, they got a 50% increase. Well, they went higher to about 70,000 and this kind of thing. I didn't consult, because of inexperience, I didn't consult with the union. I had engagement with the union when I took over. We met and we get to know each other and so, but when I instituted that, they were vexed about it. and they came out and say, you know, they can't tolerate this. It's a breach of collective bargaining
Right.
agreement. Maybe it was, but it caused a little conflict. And, you know, people saw the need, people saw the fact that the unions were there for so long and they were still earning $30,000. And I just came and I gave them such a big increase. And on the basis of that, I mean, there was some internal conflict with union members. But we are open to all. I mean, union is a fact of life. I mean,
So the
collective
union is still
bargaining-
in place in Pegasus?
No, the union is not. They
No.
formed their own association.
Now, Change Guyana is advocating significant tax concessions and
Yes.
incentives. Now, you've read the Auditor General's report consistently of billions and billions of dollars in waivers going to businesses. You do have remigrants, you can say, but those constitute a very small part. The oil sector, billions again.
Billions of dollars.
Now, what kind of relationship or matrix between tax collections and tax concessions would you advance? In other words, you collect $100 million in taxes. What's a fair level of tax concessions in your view?
Well, Chris, you know, my personal view and that of Nigel itself, and a lot of business people, and possibly including yourself, because recall you saying years ago, make the tax 10% and nobody will evade tax. You will get so much collection. Now, their history will tell you that when taxation is high, you don't get maximum compliance because high taxation facilitates corruption. Our idea is to have a level playing field for all, where we have a low taxation destination. Of course, it has implication for government revenue, but I'll come to that, how we can bridge that. Have a low taxation destination. First of all, because we are heavily taxed, you mentioned the income tax, the corporate tax, but we also have a 50% tax on fuel. It hasn't gone down even though fuel prices came down from the $100. It was supposed to adjust to 30%. But tax on fuel is 50% now. So our immediate thing is to gradually reduce income tax so that the people of Guyana, the working people, have more control over their income. Not government take that taxes and spend it as they wish.
Well,
now,
remember my question is the relationship or matrix
Yes, I'm
between
coming.
tax collections and tax concessions.
Right. So what we decided to do, gradually withdraw concessions. Of course, there will always be certain industries, like creative industries, new industries, that require certain support. But we would not do it like make it a rule about concession. We'll say, look, okay, you have 5 years to generate profits, any new industry. And after that 5 years, we expect a certain level of taxes. We want to bring down taxes for agro industries to about 20%, because agriculture takes a long time to achieve profitability, because a lot of the growing operation take about 3 to 5 years. So we'll have select tax rate for agriculture, select tax rate for manufacturing, of course commercial activity. But over time, we will totally abolish income tax on the unemployed, unless you're, and we said to start with,
on the
unemployed.
So where would they be paying, if they're unemployed, where would they be paying taxes?
No, the employed, sorry.
Okay, okay.
So we said we start immediately, because I mean, purchasing power in this country is so
But
so
are
low.
you advocating, Mr. Badal, that someone earning $1 million and then getting unearned income, you know, the old fashion tax language, meaning income from dividends or interest, etc., might be another $1 million, that person should not contribute to the tax system of the country?
Yes, of course. But let's say our regime is like, we will start with 100,000. Our plan, just to articulate our plan, 100,000 you don't pay any taxes. Depending on the performance of the economy, Then the next year we bring that to $150,000. Eventually, we foresee that anybody earning $200,000 shouldn't pay taxes. Of course, high-income earners should pay taxes. They must contribute to the economy. But of course, they're paying 12% tax. They're paying 12% VAT. And if
well, they only pay 12% VAT, 14%, not 12.
14% now.
They only pay if they spend, but we do know
Yes.
that in terms of VAT, the poor people would probably pay a higher percentage.
A higher percentage of their income.
But I want to ask you this question, and I think your party has raised some interesting points. I listened to your press conference yesterday, but what these concessions we're talking about is 100,000, 150,000, 200. How much is this going to cost?
You mean the withdrawal of?
Yes. How much would
Yes.
it? What
Okay.
would it do? Because if we
Yeah.
don't get it in tax revenues, then we have to borrow.
You have to borrow, of course.
And that has consequences as well.
Well, here is how we will bridge the gap. We mentioned that the extortionary level of taxes on motor vehicles create the corruption and require concession. All the new vehicles coming in this country are concessions. Nobody buy a new vehicle. So we bring down the tax on new vehicle. We get more people can afford new vehicle. We get taxes on new vehicle. Our taxes from motor vehicles is about $4 billion. We foresee by making it more affordable and insist on new vehicles, the government will get more revenue from
but
motor
I was
vehicles.
trying, we're fellow accountants.
Yeah.
I was trying to pin you down in terms of numbers.
Okay.
How much would these tax concession cost this country in, say, in 5 years' time or 2 years' time or 1 year time?
Well, look at it this way. You have taxes to cover a government structure, right? If we reduce taxes at the same time, have the government under strict fiscal discipline, where it can't overspend money. The bureaucracy, the public sector is now bloated. I mean, since over the last 5 years. The government...
We've never had a government as big as this.
As big as this. We're spending, this year, we're collecting $239 billion.
Yes.
In 2015, we collect $146 billion.
Yes.
If we had stayed our government expenditure at that $146 billion, right, we could have lower taxes, right? The point is, when you have a big government, you have to cover.
You would have said to your public servants, you can't get salary increases.
You wouldn't get salary increases. But in the productive sector, if you stimulate the productive sector with lower level of taxation and make the field level that everyone have the same opportunity, I mean, you can cover that deficit. The hope that that we have, is that because we will stimulate investments in all sector, agro-processing, tourism, and all these with these lower level of taxation, that will stimulate more revenue in the process.
But Robert,
what's happening in the U.S. is the same. They cut tax and they stimulate the economy.
Well, you stimulate the economy, but look at what's happening to the debt.
Well,
I mean,
you see a certain section of the population not paying taxes. We give for the 3.2% of government revenue is the concession we give to oil company.
Yes.
Now, everybody coming to our country must pay taxes. I mean, we can't be the only one. We probably have the narrowest tax base.
Let me go back to some political matters,
Yeah.
because I'm looking at it. But it's an interesting... before we go on, though, I want to ask you whether you are an advocate of trickle-down economics, because that's what the U.S. does. That's
Yes.
What's your view on it?
Well, it should go both sides. I mean, when you develop your productive base, then government gets more revenue. When when government gets revenue, then you can spend more in the economy, but spend more of your money on in terms of enhancing the productive capacity or the efficiency of government. But we have not been spending money. Like in the last 5 years, we haven't seen new roads. We haven't seen like a drainage and irrigation scheme. We haven't seen a bridge to correct the problems on the West Coast and the productivity of people productivity that is lost in traffic every day. So these are the things that government should spend a lot to expand capacity and improve efficiency. So it's a whole cycle of consideration. But given the level of taxation on the ordinary people, the employed, I mean, our policy is to reduce the taxes on the employed immediately so that we give them more control over the income. They will go and spend that income. Government will get more revenue. Lower taxation to the private sector will generate more investments.
But in order to do that, though, Mr. Badal, you have to know what impact this is going to have.
Yes, of course, of course. And it's difficult from our position here, not being in government and not having access to those information, the impact it will bring. One impact I know it will bring significantly is that we'll get more revenue from motor vehicles. We will get the income tax on employed is about $29 billion, right? It used to be like around $13 billion dollars. I guess a lot because of some expats in the country. But the thing is, it's not a lot. It's not a lot if you raise the threshold to 100,000 and then take it to 200,000 the next, because part of the money comes back with consumption. Right now, business is so slow in Regent Street and all the malls because people don't have the money to spend. The relief that we will give people will stimulate the economy, will stimulate the purchasing power within the economy. And at the same time, we cut government expenditure, government consumption expenditure, while expanding government investment expenditure. So we lift the whole productive capacity of the country.
Let's get back to some politics now. What are your expectations of your party's success in the upcoming elections? You probably need about 6,000 votes to get a seat. Regionally, it could be smaller.
Regional.
You could be smaller. But,
Yes.
but overall, that's what it would be. What's your expectation?
Well, I think we are
objectively.
I think for a party that is just over two months, we have built a significant ground operation. We have people. We can't afford the big rallies and the soca music and trucking people all over the country. But certainly our ground operation, our youths in all regions, all the 7 regions we are contesting, they are very mobilized. They're giving feedback every day. They're sending photos to social media. They're very active on the field. We have some town hall meetings coming up in East Barbies, Essequibo, Linden. So we are optimistic that, our target is to have at least 30% of the votes. It might sound crazy, given the voting habits of people.
I didn't say that. You said it.
And the ethnic loyalty, because one side see we have to keep out the other side because they look a certain way. But our freshness and our policies in relieving people of the struggles that they face every day.
So you're saying you would do 3 times better than the AFC?
Well,
at its prime?
I would say confidently we will do better than the AFC, the PPP, the PNC. Because look, we are not getting into government because we want anything for ourselves.
When you say you will do better than, you mean you get more votes than them?
Well, in terms of vote, I mean economically. I think our policies
I'm talking about elections.
Well, I mean, you don't come into the political life thinking that you're not getting any growth. It's better we pack up and go home.
No, you believe in a cause.
I believe in a cause, and we are working very hard for that cause. And we hope that people are looking and people are listening and that they identify with that cause and they're one of us. So, you never know where things could turn, but we are at this juncture after being beaten up all over the years by the 2 parties. We can't see ourselves. We create a ruling elite that abuse power and everything, that I don't think we can go much further with them.
Now, is your party in this for the long haul? Is Robert Badal, Nigel Hines, all the leadership? Let's say you do badly in these elections, and that's not my wish.
Yes.
But
yes.
Is Change Guyana here to stay?
Well, I believe so. I mean, I'm in it to stay because until we get progress, until we have better leaders, I mean, Change Guyana will be a political party going forward, even to the 2025 elections, because I think we will make good ground and it will provide a platform for us to consolidate and have better ground operation and keep the government in line so that people see us as the best alternative. We are in this, we won't build a structure and then just leave it like that. I mean, we're hopefully after the elections we can have people seeing that, this is the real hope, this is the future, and then they can come and identify more than they're identifying now. So we are in this for the long haul because I think Guyana and the people of Guyana need better leadership, and from that standpoint, I think it is a cause that is well worth it to dedicate, some of our time to.
Let us say you do get the Change Guyana does win some seats in the National Assembly. Will you yourself, as leader of the party, be entering the National Assembly?
Of course, I have to be there. I'm the presidential candidate.
Now,
But we will maintain at all times our independence. What we foresee our role, let's say we get 5
the
seats.
FC said that to you.
Oh, yes, I know.
Your friend and his dead meat.
But, I mean, this is not FC, this is Robert Badal, Nigel Heights, right? We are in this because we want to, we look at the people down, I mean, the people who don't have a job. Our role will be to maintain independence and to ensure that our economic plan is being executed. Of course, let's say we don't have the presidency, you have to deal with the government of the day. But we will ensure that we hold our independence to keep the government in line, to ensure there's better governance and accountability, and ensure that our economic plan, like making everybody who earn 100,000 from day one or less, no taxes, and have a plan to upgrade that to $200,000. The motor vehicles, the taxes on fuel, our long-term objective of a low-cost destination that bring investments and jobs to this country and elevate the quality of life of all Guyanese.
Now, you've said that if you get, you will go into the National Assembly. How do you propose to promote in the National Assembly matters which directly or indirectly will benefit your personal interests and at the same time separating the two so that you're not accused of
yes.
They talk about blind trust, the kind of thing
Yeah.
that Trump has resisted to.
Yeah.
Well, he's had his children on the place now.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, Chris, I will always have my business. I'm a businessman. I love that, right? But part of my time will be spent furthering the interests of the people of this country, because I feel that whatever policy is being made is across the board, that it touches every business in that sector, because a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you have policies,
I have a big problem with that quotation.
I know why.
you know the retort to that. What if you don't have a boat? You drown.
You drown.
So I saw Granger say the other day,
Yeah.
in his decade of development, that's fairly discredited, though, Robert.
Yeah, I know. But everybody must have a boat. Not only a boat named David G. I mean, everybody must have a boat. Everybody must have a car. Everybody must have a home. The level of interest rate.
So
in
the
this
question was,
country.
how do you separate these two?
Well,
You would stay in your business.
I will stay in my business. There is nothing in the law that would require me to separate myself from my business. Of course, because of what happened before the Trump scenario you talk about, people will get the impression that there's conflict of interest. But, to be honest, I will ensure that at all times I keep it separate, that at no time I have any benefit whatsoever that other people in the sector doesn't have. Our objective of a tax destination and removing concession stand. We will ensure that we fight for the government of the day to have that as part of the economic policy, that over time Guyana must be a low-cost destination, low-tax destination, because look, we can have thousands and thousands of jobs overnight. Look at the failure of Gaisuko. Again, the thousands of acres of land in one blocks, and what we can do with that for rice cultivation and a stream of other crops, palm oil. The price of palm oil in the world market and the shortage of lands the world over, palm oil, the Wauna plantation, everybody in Region 1 would have had a job. The Gaisuko lands, if we encourage private, local investors, or even foreign investors to engage in other profitable crops. Let me tell you about cocoa. Where I grew up, cocoa grow wild. Cocoa could generate more revenue than rice, could employ more people than rice, could generate more revenue than sugar, but it requires a vision. It requires releasing people from the repressive regulations and the big bureaucracy. When Pepsi came to look at the 2 estates in East Berbice, I mean, nothing materialized. They were just shunned, and they went to Thailand and they set up the whole thing. I mean, when Nan Prasad wanted to invest in the estate there, or DDL wanted to invest in Enmore, I mean, nothing came out of it because nobody was welcoming. You see? So we have such a big opportunity for large-scale agro business development, agro processing. The world over require passion fruit concentrate. It's controlled by few countries in South America. Highly value added though. The value added in these industries are even higher than value added in petroleum. So there's significant opportunities, but the rules of the game has to be set that encourage investment.
You introduced the word petroleum. Are you categorically in favor of a renegotiation of the Esso Petroleum contract? And would your party support a legal challenge to the contract?
As we said in our press conference, we are in favor of renegotiating the contract to the extent that it's renegotiable, that it can be renegotiated. When we look in the contract...
Well, the only way you know that is if you take it to court.
If you take it to court, yes. Given the significant investments that have taken place already, and because of the fact we will still benefit significantly with the Exxon deal, I think it is difficult to go the path of a legal challenge, because one, it will be very costly, but as we said, we will be advised by professionals who will map a path forward. I believe it's more constructive for us going forward to have a better template in how we.
What was the point of having a template when the horse has already bolted?
Well, it's already gone through the table.
So the only option now...
Already gone through the gate.
The only option now, and you know, Nigel has made this point from time to time, this contract is extremely lopsided, and I want to draw attention to this. This is a post-discovery contract.
Yes.
After the oil is...
It's not... right, yeah.
You give those concessions when...
You know
you're
exactly.
Looking for,
you know what
which is what the
result was.
PPP did in 1999.
Yes.
But you cannot compare the 1999 contract with the 2016 contract.
Well,
it is grossly irresponsible.
Yes.
And it says something about politics and politicians that Trotman, who has practically sold the future of this country out, is still one of the leaders. In fact, I think he's a campaign finance manager.
In UPNO. Well, I'll tell you, the buck stopped with the president. I just always say, as a business leader, that finally the leader is responsible. And of course, the contract is lopsided. There's a big difference between the 1999 contract and the one, as you said, post-discovery contract there, as far as the stability clause is concerned, as well in terms of stability clauses.
Everything.
And you would know But I discovered the other day when I asked the question, what happened to the gas? Because the ministers are saying, oh, cheap electricity, the gas will come to shore.
Patterson
We
keeps saying
don't-
that nonsense.
We don't even own the gas.
Control it. No, the oil companies control it.
The gas follow the same production sharing agreement.
Yes.
And then it had,
But its development is in the hands of the oil companies.
well, that's why the policy we brought out is the follows. We say all future contracts has to be royalty based. We know our money up front. We say, look, we want 10% royalty. That money goes to the treasury, and we can spend that on the people of this country. We don't have to be concerned with inflated costs. Oil companies have various subsidiaries through which costs are inflated. So we want a simple. And in addition to that, Guyana doesn't have the capacity to supervise that contract, regardless of what they say in the energy department. We do not look the way we handle the sale of the forced shipment. I mean, if we want to test, Exxon would have already tested the fuel from that reserve already. We could have get their lab analysis or whatever is required. We had to have face to face. I mean, you don't do things face to face.
To use a Freddie Kissoon's word, that is asininity at its highest. I don't know how else you can decide.
I don't know how to describe it, but to show the level of inexperience, and not only inexperience, you can learn. You can learn. Being in business, we learn every day. And if we have a new industry and we're planning to get into this industry, we research it and we get the best people to advise us.
Let me ask you quickly a couple of questions. The crisis in the sugar industry. What would your party do?
Well, that's a significant crisis, and because of failure of leadership in the past, I can't really overemphasize the failure of leadership. It shows uncaring attitude of our leaders as regards both sugar, not only sugar, bauxite. Because when you compare sugar with rice, rice is totally private sector. And look at the success of rice, of developing small entrepreneurs. Is the same path we will follow for sugar.
But it would be hard to do bauxite on a small scale.
No, you can't do
rice.
bauxite. But we will correct that with a royalty. We'll say $5, and that $5 spent in Linden.
No, but I was asking you how
But
you
sugar,
do the crisis.
but sugar. First of all, you have to keep existing.
3 minutes left.
Yeah, you have to keep existing sugar estate afloat. You can't play around with that, because the employment in Iflot, employment in Albion, Blairmont, you have to keep those going. It's impossible to reopen a sugar estate because of the level of degradation that's already taken place
Over the past couple of years
over
as
the
well.
past couple of years. The record of Gaisuka is that only, even on existing sugar estates, only 20% of the cultivation is replanted. In Enmore, there has been no replanting. You can't open that.
Let me
But
ask you
our strategy first is
Quickly,
to keep existing, and secondly, to give displaced workers the land and create like an agro-processing facility,
Yes.
give the private sector to take all the products.
What's your policy on minimum wage?
We want to take the minimum wage significantly higher than it is now. Well, not the minimum wage. We can leave the minimum wage where it is, and as we see over time, elevate it, let's say, to $100,000, because you have to give.
You think
you
it's
have to give
reasonable
small-
for somebody to live under $300,000 a day?
No way. But the thing is, you have to look at the implications for labor costs in the private sector. So our plan is to do it with the taxes, less taxes, so that the people
But-
take home that money.
But can you live
Over time-
is that a living wage?
It's not.
What is your party's view
It's
of a
not.
living wage?
The living wage now is about $120,000, and nobody in this country should be earning less than $120,000.
Should the state be paying people less than that?
I don't think the state should be paying
Should
that.
the private
and
sector
no
be paying
private
less than that?
sector should be paying anybody less than $120,000, because that's the living wage. But on top of that, you can't be taxing if somebody paying earning $120,000. You can't now take a certain percentage of that. You can't take 28% of that in taxes. It's unreasonable.
What is your position on crime? How do you think Mr. Ramjet and our friend has managed crime?
Well, I mean, the perception in the public is that he hasn't done a good job as regards crime. But
What was your view?
our policy on crime is
Gotta finish.
is that by giving more people money in their pockets, by creating jobs. You remove crime, you deal with crime
So-
by economic development.
Mr.
and
Robert
elevating.
Badal, sorry, I don't mean to be rude. Thank you very much for appearing on Plain Talk. We have a few weeks left. We'll see if you can come back.
Well, if you invite me, I'm always here.
Operators and viewers, thank you. Good night. I hope
Thank
you
you
enjoyed
very
the program.
much.
It was good spending the time with you.
Mhm.
All right, chap.